Last night, he talked about the atrocities against these children and the moral responsibility that countries have to stand up with what's right. You contrast that with just a week earlier when he was talking about how the United States is going to be pulling out all 2,000 of its troops that are there to fight ISIS because the war against ISIS is over. So we have an erratic president who is clearly trying to appeal to people who watch these photos of Syrian children being gassed, the general public that wants to know that America still has the power to do something. On the other hand, you have General Mattis, who has the sensibility to realize that this could potentially put the Middle East into further chaos and the United States right in the middle of it. And so he is trying to speak to the Iranians, the Russians, the Arab allies, the Western world, and thread that needle in a very delicate way. Unfortunately, that does not a strategy or a plan make. So we do not know what the long-term purpose is in Syria. So what does mission accomplished mean? Because clearly the Syrian war is ongoing. And just at the Pentagon press briefing this morning, we talked about how this was a very targeted and limited strike. It was not to topple the regime, yet Trump's reasoning was that it was supposed to end all atrocities. So this is the big question mark. What is the United States' goal in Syria, and what are we going to do to accomplish it?
And Malcolm, it would probably help if we had a Secretary of State who could do the talking rather than, when the guy called Mad Dog is the voice of reason, the defense secretary is having to be Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, apparently. The U.S. has 2,000 soldiers fighting ISIS in Syria. Russia has about 2,900 soldiers. There are bombers, fighter jets, and anti-missile defense systems courtesy of Russia. Iran also, of course, an ally of the Assad government. Is there a way to go in and strike Syria without, in such a way that you do not, because you certainly don't want to kill Russian troops, you certainly don't want to kill Iranian troops and widen the war. So then again, I ask, what's the point?
Well, it's a good question. Ayman made a great point. This was a very, very limited strike, and it shows the influence of General Mattis, who you could almost see that he's like he didn't really want to do it, so he had to hit something. He hit storage facilities, he hit research and scientific facilities, even though many of the equipment inside those facilities may have been destroyed. They can reconstitute this, and we're sure they have stocks in a clandestine location. This attack was much closer to the way Bill Clinton carried out an attack in the early 1980s in retaliation for the attempt by Saddam's intelligence to kill George Herbert Walker Bush in a bomb in Kuwait. We only hit their headquarters at night, and he was roundly criticized for killing no one. Yeah. If you're going to really do this type of attack, you're going to have to make it tough, and you're going to have to get the people who were in there. This was sanitary. We killed no one. We didn't even damage their air defenses. Yeah, and I think you were referring to the 1998 bombing of what people sort of dismissively called an aspirin factory in the Sudan. That's right. And so, Cal, I wonder, and I think it is an uncomfortable conversation to have, because there was this atmospherics behind what we saw happen yesterday, in which there were a series of negative stories about the president. He is under tremendous pressure. His personal lawyer is in the crosshairs of the FBI, of a federal investigation. And so, to make that analogy with Bill Clinton, who was in the midst of the Monica Lewinsky scandal when he ordered that bombing of Al-Qaeda, which, of course, Al-Qaeda was deadly and then later perpetrated 9/11. So you could make an argument either way. But I wonder how the defense establishment deals with the fact that we are having that other conversation about something that they were, they had to do. The Commander-in-Chief told me.
Right. Look, the facts are this president is totally unhinged on Twitter, right? I mean, a 3-day heads up on a military actions is giving them way too much time to move the equipment. He's under incredible political pressure here in the United States. Then take the facts on the ground in Syria. 500,000 people dead. 11 million people displaced, 6 million of them internally, 5 million of them externally. Are these deconfliction missiles? It's confusing, right? Nothing is going to change on the ground in Syria. And frankly, these 500,000 people who were killed were not killed by chemical weapons. Yeah. They were killed by conventional weapons, and that's likely to continue. Yeah, and Ayman, I cannot miss the fact that Donald Trump is also the president who slammed the door shut on Syrian refugees coming to this country. If you want to help the people who are victims of Bashar al-Assad's heinous government, you might want to let some of them into the country who are asking to come. Trump says no. This civil war has been stretching on and on and on since, the Arab Spring. Yeah. When Bashar al-Assad made it very clear he ain't going. Yeah. And he's clearly not going. He has the backing of Iran and Russia. If we're not going in there to actually do something to end that slaughter, making this point, I wonder in the region,
and if we can just put up the little map of the region, that, you know, you have Syria sitting right there near Iraq, near Jordan, near some of our allies, some of the places what message does it send in the region to have just done this?
Well, I think you can kind of pick up on the Pentagon spokeswoman's statement saying our goal in Syria is to defeat ISIS. So if you are Turkey, if you are Jordan, if you are any of the countries, Saudi Arabia, close ally, who want to see the United States be more robust in trying to bring an end to the civil war, in possibly even go as far as pushing for regime change in that country, you would be very disappointed to know that this evening, or at least this morning, it's been a long night for me, that, that the president and the spokesperson for the Pentagon are saying that is not the objective. Our objective is to defeat ISIS, but we also just want to make sure that we're sending this message that the use of chemical weapons is a violation of international law. On one hand, and this is the point that you made that I think is absolutely right, there's so many contradictions coming out of this White House, not just on the issue of accepting Syrian refugees, but the hypocrisy of saying it's okay to die by conventional weapons by the hundreds of thousands, but if you die by chemical weapons, that suddenly becomes a threat to our national security. You saw the president in 2013 say President Obama needs to have authorization from Congress to carry out a strike. He went. President Trump did not go to Congress. I know, and President Trump did not even go to Congress to seek that authorization. He said President Obama's strike on Syria would be a disaster. Here he is now doing the same exact thing.
And there are plenty of tweets, Naira, of Donald Trump saying that it was a bad idea to go into Syria. He was very much against it. Just weeks ago, he wanted to pull completely out. There isn't a sort of message that makes sense. And by the way, if we're there fighting ISIS, so is Bashar al-Assad. So it's not like he and ISIS are on the same side. There are so many conflicting sides here. He's fighting an insurgency. He's also fighting with ISIS. I want you, since you worked in the State Department, to tell me, how do we communicate all of this that seems so contradictory without a Secretary of State?
We don't, and actually that's a big part of the problem, is that there is no diplomatic effort ongoing. Prior in the Obama administration, we had a diplomatic effort that was supposed to be going alongside the threat of military intervention, which is generally you have a tactical military strike and your diplomats come in after the pressure has been put on the enemy. Your diplomats come